cypherpunk circles and Bitcoin for a long time. I think since 2012 or 2011. And he understands perfectly well why all these technologies are created and what are the major goals, like trust minimization. But he systematically chooses to go in another way, in a way of centralization. And he believes that believing in trust minimization and defending it strongly is a little bit ridiculous. And I think that is, and he believes that Bitcoin and ETC individuals who defend these principles with a lot of energy and strongly, he believes that we are a little bit stupid in a way. One argument that he always had when we were debating with Nick Szabo and Vlad Zamfir and Vitalik and me about trust minimization, he used to say things like, okay, you don't need 80,000 nodes to run the blockchain. With 1,000 is okay. So he always minimizes, the strength and the strong position that cypherpunks have to always go in the direction of decentralization. He believes it's not necessary. He believes in things like, okay, when people don't understand these things, so if you do adapt, that is a little bit centralized, it doesn't matter. Another example of that is when he wrote the article and his opinion and his philosophy of weak subjectivity. That's a perfect example because these systems, or Bitcoin and ETC, need to have subjectivity minimized in a very extreme way. It's the only way to be decentralized. And if you add a little bit, like he says, or weak subjectivity, it's just a never-ending path where you end up with total centralization. And I think that's the path of Ethereum. It went in one direction, and now he guided the community in a totally opposite direction. And I think it's pretty likely that Ethereum is going to end up as a totally centralized system in a few years, in the long run. So I know this is all to show that even that he understands both sides, and maybe that's the reason why he did such a good job in explaining the position of what is really his opponent, who are maximalists. In fact, I think he's the person who baptized people who believe in these principles and cypherpunks as maximalists.
Right, he coined the term, didn't he?
Yes.
Yeah, it does make me wonder, then, given that he does understand it, and he chose to reject it, what is the thing that made him decide to do that, do you think?
Write this article?
Reject maximalism. I mean, yes, you could say, okay, it's not. It might be overkill to have full decentralization maximalism, but why even drop it in the first place? What's the advantage of not having it, other than scalability, perhaps? Is that a trade-off that he made it in his own mind?
I think it's because maximalism is the longer way. It's the one that requires more work. It's the one that requires much more thinking and trying to invent designs that preserve decentralization. And centralization, like Nick Szabo wrote very well in his article, trusted third parties are security holes. People should Google it and read that article. Designers of systems they always build points of centralization where you need a trusted third party to run that point, and therefore the whole system becomes centralized. Because they always have a design problem, and they end up choosing the easy path. I think that the cypherpunk philosophy of trust minimization and only implement things if they confirm decentralization or they go in the direction of decentralization, and they always reject without exceptions any introduction to the system that may introduce subjectivity or centralization. So I think it's a little bit that it's easier to go on the other path where you centralize things. It's a much easier design if you observe proof of stake. There's no invention in proof of stake. It's just a convoluted way of designing a system the traditional way that has always existed in humanity. So it's in a way it's a little bit of a lazy position, but it's also, I think, and then the other reason I think is because, and you can see this in all the other projects that were built that are proof of stake for smart contracts, like Polkadot and Cardano, Solana, etc. They don't introduce any invention, but I think that there are projects that they saw the opportunity that this technology can produce billions of dollars of wealth, and it creates value for them in the short term to make up a story like Avalanche or Polkadot or Cardano that they're going to be proof of stake because they save the planet, and because proof of work is evil and it damages the climate, and with very convoluted explanations, they try to tell everybody that they're very secure, and the insecurity is hidden in those very complex systems that they have created. But their coins go up, and Solana is worth $42 billion, and Cardano is worth $40 billion, and Ethereum is worth $415 billion, Ethereum 1, the one that is going to migrate to Ethereum 2. So in that sense, if they were looking for short-term wealth, that was the right strategy. No, the long path and the difficult path would not have produced this wealth to them. So I think that looking for wealth in the short term and not really focusing on decentralization, which is difficult, are the reasons why he has that way of thinking. He's also naturally a central planner. I mean, the many papers that he has written about social things, like what's this, philosophy radicalism or something like that, social radicalism or something. He wrote a paper about that. He always has a way of thinking that he's very intelligent, no? That he can design out and he can design justice, and he can design fairness and stuff like that. So he always tends to be a centralist in that sense, philosophically.
I think are you referring to the concept of radical markets?
Yes, that he wrote something about that. And he always, I mean, when you see all his work, everything that he has written, you can see that he's a person that is the typical central planner. Central planners, when you see when they speak, etc., they always think that it's a matter of getting together 10 geniuses in a university, PhDs, and you can design out this problem that they have, instead of instead of letting the free market, for example, work and stuff like that, they want to design equality. And if there's a problem in society, they believe they can plan it from the center. And I think that Vitalik also has that profile. So I would say the three reasons are those. One, that decentralization is difficult, so it's easier to go in the other direction. Two, that to sell to the world something that it's not, but to create billions. Today, we're still in that window where these guys can produce these fake blockchains and make a lot of money. So that's another. I think that must be the overarching reason. And then this last thing, that there's people who are naturally centralist. They're naturally, especially very intelligent people, PhDs, etc. I know this. They think that they can get together in a board meeting and design out these problems centrally. So I think those three reasons make Vitalik that kind of person. And again, regarding this article, this is why I believe that this was clearly April Fool's joke. And he's really criticizing Bitcoin. Everything that he says in the paragraphs is a criticism to Bitcoin. That it's simple, that it's not programmable, that it's not complex, that you have to go slow. All these things are things that are really criticisms of maximalism and Bitcoin.
Some really interesting points there, and I would add that, yeah, especially central planners combined with massive money-making opportunities will find it very difficult to design something in a way that does not benefit themselves. And we can see the same pattern throughout history. Whenever you have some privileged class.
Exactly. If you are Pfizer, you want to sell people the new vaccine, even though it's not proven, rather than use a medication that's been there for 30 years and it's proven to make something better. And if you own the monopoly of money, you're gonna hate that El Salvador decided to adopt Bitcoin. So I think that's the kind of dichotomy that we have here.
I would also suggest one other reason to add to your list, which is I believe the opinion of Vlad Zamfir, for example, is subjectivity is necessary for moral reasons, such that the owners of the protocol can reach in and fix things if they go too wrong.
Yes.
However, I see that as a flawed position, because you're necessarily going to have to make a decision when to intervene. And that itself is a moral burden, which is going to necessitate like hurting some groups over others. Like, why should one group have their hack undone where some other group does not? And it's an inherently, I guess, it's going to involve moral problems like nepotism and that kind of stuff.
Yes. Yes.
So the only moral position is to actually not do anything and just let the protocol continue.
Yes. Which is the difficult part.
In an objective way.
Yeah. Yes, as humans, we always want to bring good for communities to the world. It's a natural bias, a natural impulse, and it's very difficult. And sometimes to not do that brings more good to humanity than trying to fix things immediately. And that second path is much more difficult to think about. It requires more levels of knowledge, more abstractions in your mind to understand why the path of not reacting immediately to solve something and just let the system work. Because if you let it work, it's going to be much better, but in the long run. That requires much more mental work, much more knowledge, much more information about history, humanity, anthropology, biology, even genetics. it's much more marketable to say, I am the hero, I'm going to solve this now, like in the DAO. No, we should do a fork and recover the money. Of course 95% of the people are going to love that, because it's emotionally catching, it's immediate solution, and you position yourself like a savior. So in the short term, everything is perfect, and everything's going to be in favor of that. And the other path is lonely, not a lot of support. It's hard because you have to lose the 3.7 million ETH and just forget about them. And you have to wait to see the positive effects in the long run. So, yeah.
It sounds exactly like politics, in that free markets, if left alone, have the ability to become better over time through competition, natural selection, variation, and overburdening an economy with regulation might seem like a good idea, but in the long run, it very rarely tends to be. In fact, almost certainly will cause more problems down the line, just like subjective interventions in blockchain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I do see another part in this article that, in my opinion, is worth mentioning. He does some sort of mirror between the communities, between Bitcoin community and Ethereum community, where I think, by looking at my beginnings in crypto, I think he is right, because first time when I heard about Bitcoin, I remember checking it out and finding out all sorts of stuff, bad stuff related to it. I even went on deep web and saw the markets there. So I think a lot of people didn't adopt Bitcoin in the beginning because of this dark, I don't know, the dark stuff surrounding it. And in 2016, I think Ethereum managed to open up in a way that people were more engaged in learning about crypto and seeing the good parts of it and how it can be used. So I do think that the two communities are different, and overall, Bitcoin not having a public figure who can go and talk to governments and talk to people and talk to people in power and propose this technology, the blockchain technology, without a figure like Vitalik, I don't think that mass adoption would have increased. So this is what I wanted to say.
Yeah, and I think this also ties in with a point that was raised that I hadn't really thought about before, which is about the agreeableness of the different communities. And I'm just going to read one of the paragraphs because I thought this stood out to me. And talking about different types of actors within a cryptocurrency ecosystem that can be malicious and potentially on the surface seem like good guys, but in reality are trying to scam people or manipulate people and are just bad actors, basically. But the paragraph reads, "One could stand against all of these actors with a smiling face, lightly telling the world why they disagree with their priorities. But this is unrealistic. The bad actors will try hard to embed themselves into your community. and at that point it becomes psychologically hard to criticize them with sufficient level of scorn that they will truly require. The people you're criticizing are friends of your friends, and so a culture that values agreeableness will simply fold before the challenge and let scammers roam freely through the wallets of innocent newbies.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like a perfect example of why you need disagreeableness and toxicity in a community to
Mm-hmm.
weed out bad actors. And I think this may be why we see, like, think of the number of scams happening in the Ethereum ecosystem compared to that of Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And yet it's true that it might be easier to make scams in the Ethereum ecosystem, but it's also, I think, that level of agreeableness and trying to make everyone happy that prevents genuine criticism from being heard when it's needed.
Yes, it's a form of peer pressure.
Yeah, so as you were saying, Brolau, that initial sort of welcoming and happy clappy rainbows and unicorns culture is great at encouraging people to join and get involved and learn about something new, but it comes with a price, and that is basically if everyone is sort of peer pressing each other into being nice all the time, then it prevents bad actors from being identified, or potential bad actors from being identified.
Yes, it's true. He even is mentioning that Bitcoin maximalism practically helps people who are getting involved in crypto, because the chances are that if you buy Bitcoin, you don't buy a scam, right? You don't buy a product that disappears the next day. So the Bitcoin community also offers some sort of support for new investors.
Do we get disconnected?
No, I'm just trying to find some points to talk about on this. I would question, Donald, the if this was purely an April Fool's joke, would it not be a little bit more obvious? And to me, a lot of these points seem to be so well put that, like in a typical April Fool's joke, there's like, yes, but this is absurd. Like, it doesn't seem very absurd to me.
Yeah, I understand. I understand that. I think it was a joke. I don't know if it's a joke or it was his psychology when he wrote this, or if it was just how do you say this, a stream of the mind, and he just wrote the article trying to balance in his head both sides. After years of debating with him and knowing his opinions and knowing that he acts and defends the opposite I think that this was an April maybe it's just his kind of humor.
Yeah, it could be. I think regardless of the intent and the way that he's trying to frame it, if we imagine this was not published on April Fool's and was instead just published on the, I don't know, the Ethereum Classic blog, for example, and taken at face value, this would be a really good piece, I would say. So separating who did it and why they did it, the piece alone is a very good meme, and it really kind of condenses a lot of the arguments for maximalism.
Yeah, if it were a seriously written article written by a cypherpunk, I would say it's a shallow article. I don't think that the topics are developed enough, and they only show things that people would see as negative, no, like simplicity of a system and lack of innovation and all those things. So it would be an underdeveloped article, and it would be a bad article. And it would be, if it were written by John Smith, some dude, no, John Doe, nobody would even pay attention to this article. But because it's written by Vitalik, and he loves to position himself as this great thinker and quasi-philosopher, like a Greek philosopher, people go and read it, and they think it's amazing. So if it were a seriously written article, it's a poor article written by a baby, with all the topics underdeveloped and not explained well. But because it was Vitalik, and he's the founder of Ethereum, and Ethereum is this threat to Bitcoin, and because he wrote this article that, whoa, he's talking in favor, oh my God, what level of superation, mental and moral superation he has, that he can write in favor of the competing system. Oh my God, people, I mean, he does this, he manipulates people like this. So going back to your point, if it were a serious article, it's a poorly written article, in my opinion. I mean,
I can see your agreeableness oozing out. But yeah, point taken.
We're losing you, I think.
Yeah, I see your point. I think it does lack a bit of depth, but he sort of hits the right notes, and he is proving that he, as we started with, he knows both sides.
Yes, as an outline, I mean, the list of points from the beginning to the end, it's a good list, grocery store list of the points that he has been hearing from real cypherpunks, people who really understand the blockchain and why the blockchain was invented and what are the principles. And so he's been hearing all this for many years, and he's been systematically on the other side and acting. I mean, you can see where the Ethereum community is, where the system is going. So it's amply proven that they're going in the totally opposite direction. In a way, I also thought that this was a good positioning piece, because if you don't see it as a April Fool's Day, and you see it as a genuine article, you could also say that it's a good strategy for Ethereum, like for ETC, it's a good strategy for Ethereum 2 to actually happen, even though it's a shitcoin and doesn't comply with our principles. But we do want Ethereum to move away from our position. We don't want Ethereum 1 to stay as a proof of work system, which is practically identical to ETC, because that would permanently put ETC lower in the ranks and in value in the blockchain industry. If you have this huge competitor there already without the network effect. So we want them to move away. In a way, I praise a lot Ethereum on social media and publicly, in a way to push them to move away to Ethereum 2.0, even proof of stake, even though I hate proof of stake. So in the same way, this article, with his influence, today he is a person of a lot of influence in society, to affirm Bitcoin's position as this simple, rudimentary blockchain that is proof of work, and just if he says just stay there because my position is the one to be scalable and programmable, and to convince the world to use my system for that, then in a way it could be also a marketing strategy, to reposition or to make sure that Bitcoin stays as a proof of work system, because to make sure that it wouldn't compete with Ethereum 2. I also thought that at some point that this guy from Ripple, Chris Larsen, he started this campaign to change the algorithm in Bitcoin to proof of stake last week, under the argument that proof of work is bad for the environment and all that. And maybe this article is a response to Chris Larsen saying, no, Chris, don't be stupid. It's better for Ethereum proof of stake or Ethereum 2 and Ripple for Bitcoin to stay as a dirty, horrible system, simplistic, with all these hooligans and barbaric people who defend it. Let's keep them there. We don't want them to move to proof of stake, but because that would compete with us. So I thought that it was also a marketing kind of thing like that.
Interesting. And there is like a non-zero chance that this whole maybe Vitalik did the hard fork purely so that Ethereum Classic would be created, and he's rooting for Ethereum Classic this whole time, and he's doing everything in his power to make it more successful, including moving Ethereum to proof of stake. But that would be a pretty crazy conspiracy theory.
That he would be secretly in favor of proof of work and ETC?
Right.
No, I don't think so. But in that case, Vitalik would not even be human. He would be like a multi-dimensional alien if he would be pursuing that strategy.
Well, if he is, then he's being pretty successful so far.
Yes.
Does anyone have any input about the reaction that this got in the Ethereum ecosystem? Because I've not been tracking this. Are most people thinking that it's just a joke?
I don't think it has been taken serious. Haven't saw anything in the news or something like that.
Yeah, I would assume that most of the ETH maximalists or ETH, shall we say, .s people will be just sort of dismissing this as purely an April Fool's joke. But it seems to be contrary to their narrative. speaking about the attempts to move Bitcoin away from proof of stake, which was another interesting happening of last week, I guess. I guess the hashtag change the code was being used as a means to push that idea. And I guess this is something that we should look out for as something that might also come to Ethereum Classic. And in fact, all chains that are proof of work are likely to be demonized as time goes on. And it's probably going to be used as a means to try and regulate blockchains. And it creates an interesting point about which chain's more likely to survive and provide value. And some might say that, because proof of stake is not going to be regulated, it has the ability to survive long term. And because proof of work is going to be stopped by many different jurisdictions, then it has no future. But if you take the viewpoint that blockchains shouldn't need permission to exist, they should just be able to exist anyway, then it's actually the other way around. And proof of work is the only consensus mechanism that has the ability to survive, whether or not it has permission.
Also, the EU did reject a law that was proposed for banning proof of work. So there isn't any danger from Europe.
The proof of work debate, the proof of work versus the environment debate, is one. The proof of work is the only true decentralized consensus mechanism versus any other. Debate is another war. Regarding the first war, you have this layered thing in the arguments. The simple thing is we need to solve the climate change. Yes, we agree. Proof of work uses energy. That's bad. Therefore, stop. No, that's the simplistic. That's the emotional, the immediate, the marketing hero, the fake hero kind of argument, and it catches on very quickly because everybody's so brainwashed with climate change, and that we're going to die tomorrow. And when you tell someone proof of work uses electricity, that's bad, the person eats that immediately. Therefore, we have to stop it. Yes, I support that. All that is the simplistic, easy to market political thing, and 90% of the people are going to eat that bait. But the truth is that the real good is to actually promote proof of work, because miners, because of the nature of their business, they need lower electricity costs, lower energy costs, and because renewable energy is cheaper per unit, they actually invest 70% of their investment in energy in renewable energy, which is much more than any country, any other industry in the world. And proof of work is actually promoting the acceleration of the migration to renewable energy. So it is actually good for the environment. But this alternative explanation, which is the truth, is so difficult for people to understand. Yeah, they need to understand economics, they need to understand why the business model of miners, how it is and why they compete, and the fact that they move and they can move from one place to the other seeking for lower energy costs, and they do deals with electricity companies like in Quebec. and stuff like. All this is such a long explanation. It's so difficult for people to understand that we have the more or less the same thing as cypherpunk and centralist, or decentralist and centralist kind of argument. So that, and they are appealing in that campaign. They are appealing to the easy to eat by Snowflake argument that energy bad, stop it good. No, it's like a caveman kind of argument. So I guess that the only way that I see that we can keep defending this is just by continuously arguing on social media. Arguing meaning explaining our arguments, no, our logic as much as possible, repeat it constantly, and just do it to the end. No.
I would say we like I don't think the proof of work side actually has to convince anyone. It's basically it's at the honey badger stage at this point, where it can just do it once and it will continue whether people like it or not. It's like it's unstoppable. That's kind of the point. So yeah, it might help to, save other people the trouble of investing in technologies that aren't going to go anywhere. But I don't think proof of work is actually going to stop.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. In a way, we shouldn't stress so much because proof of work is unstoppable. And if it's true that proof of work is a much more secure consensus mechanism that guarantees decentralization, then we shouldn't stress so much. I think that's a good point. It's going to win anyway, is what you're saying.
Yep.
Yeah.
It will market.
For me personally, it's stressing to see Chris Larsen do this campaign and Vitalik to continually drain and drill people's minds, telling them that proof of stake is more secure. And
the irony is that proof of stake is a massive waste of energy.
Yes.
I think that's actually a good argument to flip around and use, because it's not just like energy in a sense. It's literal energy. It's wasting people's time that could be used towards better things. And if it's a dead end technology, then you could be literally wasting more energy than you are with Bitcoin by spending this time on proof of stake.
Proof of stake waste energy, like you say, and destroys the environment. because
actually, we're the environmentalists.
What?
It's the proof of work people that are the environmentalists.
Exactly. That's what really like makes me cross. No, that when these guys, they're so influential in society, and like Chris Larsen and Vitalik and Charles Hoskinson, no, that he has such a big voice. I mean, any of his videos has like from 100,000 to 500,000 views, and he's drilling all these lies, falsehoods, and trying to make everybody believe that proof of work is against the environment, when the truth is exactly the opposite. It's in favor. It's good for the environment. Oh my God.
Well, like many things, the truth will eventually set things straight. You can only hide from reality for so long.
I
Eventually,
think that's a very good philosophy. I should adopt that philosophy. Just relax and wait.
Yeah. I mean, if what we are professing is true, then that's all we have to do.
Absolutely.
It's a nice position to be in, because we don't rely on marketing, whereas the other team need marketing, and they need all that billions of dollars to continue the gravy train.
Yeah. To construct and maintain the lie. Bueno, can I say something about proof of stake and proof of work?
Absolutely.
I think that I always say that the industry is going to be layered, no? And My argument is the base layer is going to be proof of work, layer 2 that is going to provide security, and layer 2 is going to provide scalability, and it's going to be likely proof of stake or proof of authority and these channels and systems on top. So in the end, proof of stake is not that bad. When I promote Ethereum 2 to move, it's not only good for ETC because it liberates our market segment from this big competitor, but it's also true because I think that to have these systems to be more scalable, combined with the core, with the base layer, they would provide combined both scalability and security. So I've been thinking of concrete mechanics of how that would work. So my idea is two. One that the core or the proof of work chains are going to provide the sound monetary policy, because I think that the proof of stake systems, they're going to continuously change their monetary policies, and it's totally subjective. So I think that Ethereum Classic and Bitcoin and Litecoin and Dogecoin provide a little bit more security in terms of monetary policy. That's one. The other thing is anchoring, that the state of proof of stake systems can be anchored into the proof of work systems. But how do we do that? So in my imagination, what I see is that proof of work has several features. One is that because it's very costly, then it's very costly to create the coin, and that's the connection with digital, with gold, and creates these systems as digital gold. But the other one is this thing of consensus. The information, when you receive a block with the proof of work hash, that information, the hash itself, is sufficient information for the whole system to know that is the correct block, and the computers can know that even if they don't know any other computer, and they don't have to check anywhere. They know that is the correct block because the work was done. And this has other benefits, like you can disconnect from the network because your system is down or you lost electricity or whatever, and you can connect again in a week or a few days or in a month. So that permissionlessness, and wherever you are, as long as you have an internet connection, you can connect and disconnect, and you don't have to ask for permission. You don't even have to ask which is the good chain to anybody. Just by receiving the blocks, you know which is the right chain. Even if you receive attacker blocks, it's very easy to discard the imposters and choose which is the right chain. And the last feature is that because the proof of work is cumulative, then a transaction, as it gets older, it gets more difficult to modify or to tamper with, etc. So if you think about it, the database itself, if you take out everything else and you just get the database, the 725,000 blocks of Bitcoin, anybody who gets the database, they cannot change it because they have to redo the whole work. So that's a very extremely powerful thing, because even if all the miners of Bitcoin would turn tomorrow malicious, and they want to reverse a block from last year, the cost would be so enormous, not only in the computers, but also in the electricity that they have to spend all over again, that it makes it totally impractical. This is what proof of stake throws away. So what I was thinking is that if the proof of stake systems anchor their state, they put a photograph of their state every 10 minutes or every 60 minutes or once a day inside ETC or inside Bitcoin, they can actually borrow this strength from proof of work, because even if their communities tamper with the blockchain, etc., people can go to the proof of work blockchain and check the latest checkpoint and continue from there. No, so in a way, it would make proof of stake very secure. I don't know if this what I just described is something that you guys that makes sense.
I think you have to be very, very careful about one thing that you said, namely that just by having the proof of work, you're already good. This is not true. You need to have the whole history too, or at least a long enough stretch of history to be able to tell that any block that you receive with the correct nonce value, that this one is actually part of the chain. I could easily generate a completely fake block that is not part of any chain and give it to you, and it would pass the verification. But if you're not checking that it's in the chain, then you could believe it, and for example, you could find a nice payment where I send you, I don't know, a few $100,000 to buy your house, and you give me the keys, and I move in, and then you find out, oh, this block was never in any chain, and the whole thing was fake. So you have to be very careful not to confuse this. And the way you expressed it, it sounded as if you were saying that you didn't need the rest of the information. You could just look at a block in isolation and already be sure that this is a valid block. And this is definitely not true.
Yes, you need all the transaction, all the history. Yeah, when I mean, maybe I oversimplified. When I mean you can get the blockchain with all the history, the transactions, and you can check that that is correct. You can verify that it's correct very easily, no? And when I say that is correct, I mean every single transaction is hashed, the Merkle tree, the block header, and the hash. But you can also confirm that the hash did the work, no? Because they all hit the target that the protocol provided. And then, so if you want to redo a block that was from last year, you would have to go to that block and rebuild the whole blockchain again until today, and that requires a lot of energy. So that's one of the protections and security features of proof of work. So you're right. You need the whole history to check that all the transactions were included, etc.
Right, but the block itself, on its with just the block, you know how much work has been done. Sorry.
Yeah, we could have a slightly weak criterion. Also, if you can present a long enough unbroken stretch of the chain, then you could say, okay. I mean, it doesn't have to start from the very beginning. We could also, because we could say, okay, computing this, even if it's bogus, would take such a huge amount of resources that it's just impractical to do this. So you don't necessarily have to start from the beginning, but of course, you would be even more sure of the correctness of things if you do a full verification, like a node that boots from the Genesis block does. But you also get a let's say practical assurance just if you say, okay, if the last, I don't know, 100,000 blocks have been correctly have a correct proof of work on them, then it's just extremely unlikely for anybody to have done this thing in isolation just to create a false impression. And especially if you can cross check this with other information, like the difficulty isn't ridiculously low or so, and then you could be reasonably sure that this is valid. But in any case, you need to have a certain amount of context that leads to the block that you're actually interested in order to be sure that, or to be reasonably sure that it's not just fake. Because I mean, if you build a fake block, it's spending a very small amount of resources actually.
Yeah, with regards to anchoring, I think it's a possible way forward out of many different approaches, but I'm not sure how much is actually added in terms of having a whole like full proof of stake system on top of the anchoring, as opposed to some other layer 2 solution like Optimistic Rollup or other things that can provide full EVM compatibility just without the economics of staking. Because even if you have anchoring, you still have a lot of the problems that come with managing like the centralization over time and how they manage hard forks and that kind of stuff.
Yes, I agree. That's why I always say that Vitalik, what he should have done was create Ethereum, leave it as a proof of work blockchain, and then create in layer 2 the shards using Ethereum as the beacon chain, proof of work Ethereum as a beacon chain. And then on top of the shards, the rollups and the channels, and then on top of that, the rest of the whatever goes on top, no? But bueno, now they have decided to go not only Ethereum 2, but Cardano, Polkadot, and EOS, Tezos, Avalanche, Solana. They have chosen to build complete systems with all the layers inside. And they believe themselves, and they try to make others believe that their beacon chains and their base chains are layer 1 and all this, even though they're proof of stake. So now that they're built like that, I think at some point in the future, the market is going to naturally demand more security, and at some point they're going to be forced to use proof of work blockchains for anchoring for some device. No, a logical way of doing it would be to eliminate the beacon chain and readopt Ethereum Classic as the beacon chain and the place where everything is anchored. The beacon chain in Ethereum works as an anchoring system. It's a checkpointing system for all the shards.
Even if they did anchor, they could still implement censorship, including hard forks. Like they could just do DAO after DAO style hard fork, but keep it anchored.
Yes, well, that happens in a proof of work blockchain as well. And in Ethereum Classic, if we all got together and we decided to censor a smart contract, we could do it. No, if all the nodes agree, and the miners and the developers and all the community, and of course it would generate a split, because there would be a part of a community that would not agree on censoring the smart contract. So yeah, on the subjective layer, any blockchain can be digamos, smart contracts blockchain can be modified like that. So yes, the proof of stake blockchains suffer the same problem, but at least
I would say
there's an undeniable checkpoint anchor that part of the community can go to see, no, this is the real thing, not that other thing, and continue from there.
I think that actually the chain split thing is going to play out a little bit differently in proof of stake systems, in that, and this kind of depends on the actual implementation, but unlike with proof of work, there's like the dynamics are extremely different, and usually the majority stake will just annihilate the small chain because they will own stake on both chains, as opposed to proof of work where it actually splits the network. In the case of proof of stake hard forks, it doesn't really split; it just duplicates. So
Yeah.
the hard fork situation is very different, and I think far more centralized, and it means that things like Ethereum Classic won't be able to exist on proof of stake future forks.
Yeah, that's true. Proof of stake systems are very difficult to split and to break away from them because the enemy is inside the network. The miners in proof of work are external to the network. They connect and disconnect. The stakers are inside the network because they are coded into the system and their accounts are inside under stakes. So the only way to split is to split and then delete their accounts and designate new stakers.
Which means you then have to do a hard fork as well. So even if you're defending against a malicious hard fork, like in the case that Ethereum Classic would have to do its own hard fork just to survive, which is like a very different and less advantageous position than it would otherwise be.
Yeah, well, the other possibility, which would mean a much bigger structural change, is to what I meant first is by anchoring, I say that the beacon chain at some point in the future would anchor the beacon chain itself into ETC and Bitcoin or a combination. But I would agree if people say, well, that's so redundant now to have an anchor of the anchor of the anchor like that. The other model would be much more structural, which would be to detach the shards from Ethereum 2 and for the shards to use another beacon chain like Ethereum Classic and to replace the beacon chain back into Ethereum Classic. That would be much more structural.
Yeah, I tend to agree with as long as there's this L1 that's proof of work, then people should be able to build whatever they want on top of that. If it's a shard or it's a roll-up or a parachain, whatever you want to call it. I think what matters is the source of truth and there being like an anchor to the physical real world via compute cycles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in a way, all these experiments that they're doing, these guys with sharding and roll-ups channels and all that, it's all research for us.
100%. Ethereum is Ethereum Classic, and Ethereum Classic is Ethereum.
Yes.
Well, we are past the hour, and it's been a very interesting discussion. And I like this format where we have some reference material that we can read beforehand and dive into and get to the nitty gritty of. So perhaps we can reproduce this in future discussions. And thanks to everyone for joining us. Before we leave, I want to do the traditional opening of the floor in case there's any topics or suggestions that people want to bring up if you're in the chat, and I'll have a quick look at the YouTube to see if there's any questions posted. So please go ahead if you do have any points you want to raise.
Market analysis, bro.
We are looking very good on the weekly. We are finally seeing the MACD swinging bull, so we have to have some patience. this week and the next, so that traders, investors see some stability with the price. If it remains flat, chances are it'll pop up. It'll go really fast.
Nice.
Also, people should take a look at Grayscale Ethereum Classic Trust. It also has a good weekly candle. I'm seeing also my trading algorithm has flipped ETCG after a very long time. So I think it's hitting up, but remains to be seen what happens.
Thanks for that, bro. We did have a few comments in the YouTube that I will read now. First comment, Bitcoin conference this weekend. Is there a way to get ETC involved with this next year? Surely they have booths that can be rented for ETC information and someone can post that can inform the unknowing public about everything ETC related. I fully agree with that. I think it's a great idea. I would love to visit Miami next year in 2023 and do a little Ethereum Classic get together.
Yes, and we can have a booth inside the conference, the Bitcoin conference, explaining ETC. I think it's a good idea.
Another comment is regarding energy consumption. If we compare SHA-2 versus SHA-3, does anyone know is one better than the other regarding energy use? And I'm pretty sure that the energy is independent of the algorithm, pretty much. They'll both consume as much as possible. Werner, did you have anything to add to that? As our resident miner?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, what counts at the end of the day is mainly power cost, and to a much lesser extent, well, depends a bit, but generally to a lesser extent, you also have the equipment cost. But essentially, whatever you choose in the end will have roughly the same cost structure and how many hashes you generate. If you per dollar, that's largely irrelevant. This adapts to whatever technology you use, and if you have one algorithm that is much more efficient, then you will just need that many more hashes to obtain a block. So in the end, it doesn't really matter what algorithm you have as far as efficiency and so is concerned. What counts at the end of the day is how much money you have to put into this.
Thanks for that clarification. And the final point in the YouTube is a lot of people still don't know the basics, like one, what platform we should use. I assume that means exchange, for example. Number two, how we move our ETC to a secure wallet that earns us interest similar to FTX. And three, why HebeSwap should be used. With regards to number two, I'm not sure if there is any wallet that can do that. I've not heard of one that can yield you interest on ETC, but it might be a thing that exists. Does anyone happen to know?
Yes, Celsius Network is offering rewards for ETC. I think it has a 3% API.
Okay, cool. That's Celsius Network?
Yes.
Good to know. And to answer the question of why Hebe Swap or other decentralized automated market makers should be used, the answer to that is basically self-sovereignty and custody, remaining in control of the funds in its entirety in order to make trades without having to hand over your keys to some third party. And there's probably some other advantages, interoperability and certainty, transparency, all the benefits of using smart contract systems.
Donald, were you saying something about a new job you want to take, and regarding the Emerald wallet?
Yes, it's the website is emerald.cash, and it's the well-known Emerald wallet by Igor Artamanov. He was the original core developer of ETC since 2016. He was the founder of ETC Dev, and I worked for ETC Dev for him in 2018. And bueno, then ever since, he's been doing consulting and other stuff, but now he started again a new startup that is Emerald.cash, and it's the Emerald wallet that supports ETC. It's the original coin that it supports. So now I am operations manager in that company, and I have two jobs. I'm operations manager at Emerald.cash, and I'm business development manager at BIWares, which is where I worked before. So yeah, that's the news. I'm very happy to be part of Emerald.
Great to hear.
Thank you.
Congrats on the job, and it's great to hear that Igor is still active on ETC.
Yes.
Very valuable.
Yeah, we have the wallet is there. Anybody can go and download it and use it, but we have a very interesting roadmap with a series of products, and the core philosophy of the company is to push the control of their assets completely 100% to the users. So users are going to have very easy ways to store their crypto and without being traced or with anything, in a highly secure way, and for the company to provide a series of value-added services to end users, businesses, and developers in the form of infrastructure, blockchain infrastructure, and that includes running nodes and all that. So it's a very, very interesting concept. We're going to be communicating everything as time passes by. That's my job.
Great to hear. I will be looking forward to future updates.
Thank you. And thank you very much for organizing the call, Istora. Thank you, Brolal. And thank you everybody for listening.
And thanks to you, Donald. It's been a really interesting one and great discussion. So thanks again.
Thank you.
And on that note, we will be saying goodbye. And thanks to everyone else for joining us and contributing. And we will see you same time, same place next week. Take care. Bye-bye.